What's up, Casper Warrior? Today I will help you to become a pawn addict with the small center defense. And that means grabbing free pawns all the time when you play this defense. I know what you thought, and congrats, you are closer to heaven. Repent. Now, time for chess. Right. So this is called the small center defense, the rat version, and I believe it is the most simplest and safest opening for beginners, intermediate level players, and advanced players. And I just want to share my own unique ideas of the small center defense. Number one, you do not intend to push any of these center pawns further. For example, we are not going to be pushing pawn to e5 first before white pushes d5, and it's not our intention to go d5 anytime soon if white doesn't commit e5. But there are instances when the position becomes too good to advance any of these pawns, but it won't be our priority. You see, if white pushes their d pawn, in the long run we can even wait for them to take so that we take back with our light squared bishop. And if they push their e pawn to e5, we can still wait for them to take so that we take with our dark squared bishop. So imagine a scenario where our two bishops replace these two center pawns. That's what I'm talking about. And that's why you don't have to worry about these pawn advances for white. Let's go through this without white's pieces. Let's say white makes a random move. You want to go d6, random move again, e6, random move, knight f6, random move, bishop e7, mostly to prevent bishop g5 pin. Random move by white, castle short, or knight c6 first. Random move, castle short. By the way, you play a6 whenever you feel like, and h6, or up to the plan you come up with. Random move by white. Now your knight needs to go to this side of the board, so you can see the plan is consistent and I am not mixing up moves. So you go knight d7, paving the way for your dark squared bishop. Random move by white, you go bishop f6. Random move by white, you go knight e7. Random move by white, you go knight g6. Random move by white, you go knight b6. See how you are creating space for yourself. Random move by white, say you don't want to exchange queens. This is when you can play moves like queen e7. Ready to go pawn to e5 next, or d5. Random move by white, you go bishop d7. Random move by white, you go bishop c6. In most cases, when you move your queen, I highly recommend that you consider playing this pawn break before putting your light squared bishop on c6. In my opinion, this should be the perfect small center defense. Not that it took so long for us to build this position like this, but in all honesty, it depends on what white is doing. If white chooses to be non-committal, we'll just finish up our setup peacefully. If they choose to be aggressive, we want to open up the position, and I'll show you how we can be opening up the position in real games. So this is the plan I recommend for now against white's non-committal opening, and that's if white isn't doing anything to your pieces. Before we dive into the full tutorial of this, jot this second tip down. You don't want to be passive after the first 10 opening moves. Just because the small center defense is non-committal in nature, it doesn't mean you must continue being passive. Once you are done with your opening stage, which is basically the first 10 opening moves of this, you need to start thinking of opening up the position with pawn breaks like pawn to c5 and captures, as highlighted on the board. Start thinking of opening up the position. Lastly, always keep this knight maneuver in mind, like what we do in the Alekhine defense. And here is the perfect opening sequence of the small center defense. From here, white may play knight f3, after which I advise to go knight f6, attacking this pawn. If knight c3 is played, defending it, you simply go bishop e7. You know the idea, to relocate this knight to this side of the board. Say white plays bishop d3, because what else can they do? This is when you can put your knight on c6. So you see where we are developing these knights, kind of provoking white to do something about their center pawns. Now, when you play knight c6, white will be prompted to play a3 since they don't want their light squared bishop to be harassed. Once they do this, this is when you can castle short. Maybe if you want to be dynamic and more creative, these are kinds of positions where you can even break the rule by going pawn to e5, knowing full and well that if pawn takes, you can easily take back with your other pawn without worrying about this queen trade. But once again, let white be the first one to commit e5 or d5. In this case, I just recommend that you castle short. We're still in the opening stage, right? So this is not the time to start simplifying. White may do the same. And now how do you develop your last squad bishop? By putting it on d7 if you want, or fianchettoing on the queen side like this. That can also work. If you play bishop d7, your king's knight will have to come to e8 to pave the way for the dark squad bishop. Now wait a second. After you castle short and white does the same, again you have an option to go pawn to e5 if you don't mind, since your opening is safe. In short, as soon as white plays bishop d3, you are good to go with pawn to e5, and that is if you want. That's another way of developing your last squad bishop indirectly. But speaking of our Alekhine strategy, this is where I would go knight d7, waiting for white to do something about this. It is the dark squad bishop that is supposed to sit on f6. So let's say white plays bishop e. Now we go bishop f6. You see this idea? This is one bishop move that I also recommended in my Paris defense course. You can check it out at Kaspatec.com. See, it's like we are just shuffling our pieces on the 6th rank coming down, leaving the 5th rank going up for white, and they can't do anything. So from here, we are going to start thinking of relocating our queen's knight to this side of the board. Not that we did the same to the king's knight. We wanted to relocate it to the queen side like that. You only do these kinds of strategies when white is taking too long to launch an attack. And to be honest, in all this, it is the light squad bishop that is going to suffer. So anytime soon, think of playing this move, as long as you don't hang your dark squad bishop on f6. At times, you can even switch your plan. You fianchetto your bishop like that, all up to you. The key is not just to move any of our center pawns. So let's say white plays pawn to h3 for some reason. This is when we can go knight e7. Again, I don't want to limit you to anything. See that even here you can play pawn to e5 and open up the position. But just knight e7. If pawn to e5, these are moments when you want to open up the position like I mentioned earlier. D takes, this is just a free pawn by the way. White is not going to do that. And this is the position, the pawn structure you'll be having most of the times. Your h pawn will be sitting on h6 most of the times. Your a pawn will be sitting on s6. There is this other opening sequence that seems to be more challenging, where white places their 3 pawns on the center like this, including c4. Sometimes they might do it with their f pawn. We're going to look at this. So this can also arise from the queen's pawn game, where they play d4, you go d6, and after c4, you go pawn to e6. Then they realize you are a no-nonsense person, so they go back to e4. See these 3 pawns on the center for white. This can also start as a king's pawn game after e4, d6, d4 and a6. Before playing knight c3, white may play pawn to c4 first. I still recommend that you go with the same plan. Knight f6, knight d7, knight b6, knight c6, knight d7, knight g6. These moves should be played timely according to what white is doing. Don't just make them at random. Your dark squad bishop will be placed on f6 through e7. You're going to castle short, obviously. Your queen will most likely sit on e7, and your last squad bishop will go to c6 if white allows, or if white isn't doing anything aggressive. So let's go. Knight f6, attacking this pawn. They will most likely play knight c3, and this is when you can simply go bishop e7. Bishop e7 also prepares for e5, so that if pawn takes and pawn takes, you won't worry about losing your right to castle due to bishop takes d8. Now here's what I was talking about. If white chooses to be aggressive with moves like e5, attacking your knight, this is when you want to open up the position. If they choose to attack you, open up the position. And here you can even take the queen, but if you love keeping queens on the board, just go knight fd7. Your other knight to sit on c6. You castle short. This becomes well simplified, as you can see. After bishop e7, if white plays d5, since you can't play knight c6, you have an option to go knight bd7, waiting for them to take so that you recapture with your f pawn. This is also going to open up your position, especially paving the way for your king's rook. You also have an option to go e5. But speaking of oversimplification, I still recommend that given a chance, you open up the position like this. cd, knight bd7, since your knight can no longer go to c6. But anywho, this is just to show you what to do if white chooses to be aggressive. So let's say white continues being passive with moves like knight f3, not attacking. Here you can just cast a shot. Say they play bishop d3, because what else can they do? Jot this down. Bishop d3 equals pawn to e5. In most cases, since there will be no queen exchange, we want to keep queens on the board. We want to keep our queen for the endgame. But again, one of our rules is not to push any of these pawns further. Bishop d3 equals e5, but you have an option to continue with your main plan, knight c6. Remember, our main plan is to relocate the king's knight to the queen's side as we do in the Alekhine, and relocate the queen's knight to the king's side as we do in the names of wish defense. From here, say white casts shot. This is even the perfect moment to play pawn to e5, in that we are not going to lose our e5 pawn for creativity. As long as white's slice squad bishop is on d3 and your knight is on c6, you can play pawn to e5. Remember that. If d5 is played, we have knight b4, knight s6, or knight back to b8, and that f5 and knight c5. This is for those people who love playing pawn to e5. But going back to our initial plan of not pushing our center pawns, e5 can wait. We're just waiting for white to help us open the position. This is our primary strategic plan. So after castle short, you may play something like knight d7, still waiting for white to do something on the center. So let's say they play bishop e3. Again, you go bishop f6. You see where I'm coming from. You see, when you place your bishop on f6, forget pawn to e5. White is not going to play this. They are going to lose unless their dark squad bishop is on f4. But even if their dark squad bishop is on f4, let's say after knight e7, white chooses to go bishop f4, you can still go bishop f6. And if pawn to e5 comes, you just take. This is what you want to open up the position. And after pawn takes, you can still take with your d knight. This comes with an attack. After knight takes, this is exactly what I'm talking about by oversimplifying the position to open it up. This knight will sit on g6. Someday, you'll play c6 and continue attacking in the rat defense style. Enough of the c4 line. Now let's look at what to do if white evolves the f4 pawn. After e4, d6, d4, and e6, white may also choose to go f4. Intuitionally speaking, I love playing pawn to d5 in this position, kinda inviting this pawn advance to happen. Remember that pawns don't go backwards. So look at these pawn extensions as weaknesses, because I mean, pawns don't go backwards, right? Anywho, we don't want to overextend our center pawns. We just want to leave them like that. Let white decide what they want to do with these pawns. Our plan still remains the same. Knight f6, knight d7, knight b6, knight c6, knight e7, knight g6, given a chance. Bishop e7, bishop f6, given a chance. Our dream is to trade these pawns as highlighted to open up the position. If white takes too long to help us open up the position, we always have this pawn break, c5. So in this case, you can go knight f6. This puts pressure on the e4 pawn. If white ever plays pawn to e5, you take. So this is one key takeaway. If white goes aggressive, you think of simplifying the position or opening up the position. If they take, you go knight f d7. This time, because the d file is kind of closed, you can even go knight d5. So that if c4 comes, you put your knight on b6, but even better, you go queen h4 check. This is just a simple trick in this line where you might win white's rook. So knight d5 also works in this f4 line, since we have freedom to go check. If anything, when white plays pawn to f4, keep in mind the possibility to go queen h4 in the near future. That's why knight f6 works. And if they play pawn to e5, you know this queen h4 will work. If they play knight c3, trying to keep it simple, up to you to go back to the French ideas like that. But sticking to our plan, you can go bishop e7, nothing much. Knight f3, castle short, bishop d3. By the way, this is what masters do. You can check the masters database. You will find this position. The moment masters see bishop d3, this is when they play pawn breaks like c5. I've seen Hikaru doing this. And the point is, if dc happens, now the position is somewhat open. Grandmasters play with their pawn structure, not with their pieces. So they don't even mind exchanging queens. e5, knight d5, that. Bishop d2, knight c6, and life continues. So in my next video, I'll be testing the small center defense just to bring these ideas to life. It might appear to be boring, especially to players of nowadays who don't have patience. But these are openings that work in longer time control matches and other serious FIDE rated tournament games. You keep it cool in the opening stage while ensuring that you do not blunder anything, and then explode immediately when your opponent tries to be aggressive or when they attack something. So if you want to witness what I'm going to do to someone's child, be sure to join me in my next session, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Now check this out, you guys. If you want to learn more about these kinds of tricks or similar opening ideas like the ones I just shared, you can watch this video that has popped up on the top left. Another video that I highly recommend you check out to skyrocket your rating is this one that has popped up on the top right. But if you love gambit videos, you can check out the video that has popped up on the bottom left. And if you are a lover of chess traps like myself, feel free to click on the video that has popped up on the bottom right.